Hello, and we are live, and welcome to Useful Idiots. I am Katie Helper.
And I'm Matt Taibbi, and this is Useful Idiots Monday morning edition.
The Monday morning, yes. Not Tuesday touring or Wednesday warring, Thursday
thought you were going to
thawing,
pick another word there, but
or Friday feuding.
Right. None of those things. It's Monday morning edition.
Monday morning edition, yeah. Which is where we watch the shows on Sunday mornings, so you don't have to.
So you don't have to. That's exactly right. So off the top, we have to cop to something.
Yeah. I didn't want it, but Matt's insistent.
I mean, it's
no. It is a story. It's a story. Yeah.
It's a story, and it's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And we made a mistake last week. It wasn't really our fault, though. I mean, yeah. Well, it was a little bit.
It was, and it wasn't. At the end of the day, was it really? At the end, in any event, at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, when the rubber meets the road.
That's right. Right. What are the when the cards are on the table? What are some of the other ones?
When everything is said and done.
When all said and done. Right.
What else? I can't. There should be more of those.
There's probably more of those. We'll make a list.
Yeah. Well, can I just note that it's very fallish before we cop to that? Look, I'm wearing it's turtleneck time, guys.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like you in turtlenecks.
Thank you. But there's no turning back. Like we are in autumn.
Yeah. Yeah.
We already were, I guess, but now it's just like.
Yes, we've been in autumn for 6 days now. So.
But this is just we've crossed a threshold.
A Rubicon.
A Rubicon turtleneck Rubicon moment. In fact, we need a Rubicon turtleneck that says "Useful Idiots" on it with the. Rubicon
I wonder if there is anyone's ever talked about the turtleneck Rubicon, crossing the turtleneck Rubicon.
I don't think so. No one will do it. No one will touch it.
In the final analysis, to make a long story short, when the hammer meets the nail, when push comes to shove, I think we did do that one, right?
We did do push comes to shove. What about anywho?
Anywho.
Long story short.
Yeah. Or as Thomas Friedman once really said, to make a short story long.
Really?
Yeah.
Ironically, he said it, or he wrote it out?
Well, I think he meant it semi-ironically, but the funny thing is he wrote a short story long.
Whoops. Is that me or you? As many a couple has, many a one part of a couple.
That's Matt.
Okay, phew. Let's see. All right. By the way, why no chant monetization? We're looking into it. I don't know what YouTube is up to, but they're up to something. We're gonna get to the bottom of it. But you know what we need to do?
Oh, are we being something by?
We're being stifled. Now it may just be a tech error, but this is what we're gonna need you guys to do. Ready? You gotta go to that Substack, usefulidiots.substack.com, and just drop a donation. You get great paywall content, but now more than ever, we need your voices to lift us up. Is that your voices are lifting? That's a mixed metaphor, right?
No, I think it's okay. Voices do lift.
Yeah. Voices. Yeah. We need your voices to lift us up over the threshold. Because I got you over the threshold fashion wise. Now we need you. So this is a good thing. This means that if you, I don't know, it's like the meritocracy that doesn't exist may exist just today on this YouTube chat, because we can't really privilege the privileged. We can't privilege the payers because no one can pay right now.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Why is that?
Somehow we're demonetized, but I don't, I should really milk this, but I don't want to since we're about to make a mistake, I don't want to say something that's not true.
Okay.
Any other day I'd be fine with it, but we're about to cop to a mistake. But let's get
into that later. Yeah. All right. So the mistake we made is we talked about the scene at the border, and we did what everyone did, which was we talked about Border Patrol agents on horseback using whips.
Yeah.
And it turned out they weren't using whips. Actually, they were, and the photographer who took the shots that went viral, and I think everyone's seen them. He's been quoted saying that he he never saw any agents whipping anyone, that this was misconstrued. And what actually happened was that these guys on horseback were using a thing called split reins, which leaves the riders with sort of longer reins that they use to control the horse. So the interesting thing about this isn't that this mistake was made, because that can happen. But that after it kind of came to light, the Biden administration and sort of lots of politicians continued to lean into it and denounce the imagery. And we'll just look at a couple of examples.
And which, to be fair, before we get that, this is kind of an interesting discussion. One thing is the headlines and the articles, and if people weren't actually whipped, then they weren't actually whipped, and if they weren't, there were not whips. They were not whips. But it is interesting how imagery is standalone, right? Like, I'm not saying that you can define it that way, but it's certainly conjured that up, whether or not they were actually whips, and that doesn't change. Do you know what I mean? Like the what it evokes, like without any headline, without any article. Sure, it does make a difference if you're reading something that's like they were cracking their reins versus they were actually trying to make contact with the Haitians. But it does, an image is an image.
Yeah, an image is an image. And I think the only way to handle this is, and I'm going to do this later today, I'm going to call some of the people who work as Border Patrol agents and find out exactly what it is that we're looking at in those pictures. But the pictures were just sort of taken and instantly regurgitated as meaning something when we have no idea what they mean, frankly, right? Like, it's possible that they're using these elongated reins to actually strike people. Right. Not that the photographer said that he saw that. Right. It's also possible that they're using it that they're using it as a way to control the horse, which is a different thing entirely. The reality is, like, these guys have jobs where they're on horseback and they're trying to prevent people from crossing the border, which may be repugnant on some level, but that's kind of not on them if that's if that's what their jobs are. It's more of a policy issue,
right? This is interesting. Someone said that workers' control of production said the back to slavery narrative is distraction from U.S. imperialism in Caribbean and blemishing of revolutionary conquest of the Second American Revolution. They'd rather say slavery never ended, which is not exactly what you're saying, but it is related to the distractive narrative.
Yeah. I actually agree with that. So what ended up happening was they were taking a ton of heat for not resolving this massive crisis with 15,000 people under a bridge and all of that. And this image goes viral. And suddenly every politician is saying, oh my God, look at that. That's horrifying. It evokes images of slavery. And we even did that.
And it does. That's the other thing. We're not, we're like robots and,
Right. But again, we might be mistaken there. Right. And so, and particularly if this is your own Border Patrol agency and it's a mistake, it's kind of nuts. Well, let's just look at some of the video. Here's Joe Biden talking about it.
And some people are saying that the photos actually show that. I don't know if they do.
What show that the
contact being made with skin, but we have to see it.
The process.
Well,
and it's going to be up and down. That's why I don't look at the polls.
President Biden, who ran on bringing competency back to Washington, is facing a string of setbacks, a chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, a migrant crisis at the border, the ongoing COVID pandemic, and now a brewing fight on Capitol Hill between progressive and moderate Democrats over his domestic agenda. The president's job approval rating is now underwater in most polls.
Remember, I said it's going to take me a year to deliver everything I'm looking at here.
On the border, the camp in Del Rio, Texas, that was once packed with 15,000 migrants, mostly Haitians, is now gone.
There are no longer any migrants in the camp.
On Thursday, the U.S. Special Envoy to Haiti resigned in protest over the administration's inhumane, counterproductive decision to deport thousands of Haitian migrants back to Haiti. And Democrats expressed horror over the images of agents on horseback chasing migrants in swinging leather reins.
The nation has witnessed over the last 48 hours.
All right. Again, there's two different things going on here. One is what that guy resigned in protest over, which is the decision to deport all the Haitians, right? And then the other one is these images, which we don't think have anything. I don't think have anything to do with anything. But I want to look at Yamiche Alcindor's tweet and then her back and forth with Jen Psaki on this, if we could.
The president has often used his bully pulpit during the most important times in his administration. Why is he not using that bully pulpit to speak out forcefully himself on the treatment of patients?
I would say, Yamiche, certainly I've represented to you all his point of view. His point of view is also reflected in the actions that have been taken through the administration, including the investigation, including the change in policy. The Secretary of Homeland Security oversees these efforts and has been quite outspoken and quite visible on what steps we should take moving forward. And he certainly may still speak to it. Obviously, there's a lot of events happening here, including the UN General Assembly, COVID, and others, and I wouldn't rule that out.
And just to say, respectfully, I just have a couple more questions. Everyone else got questions in. Respectfully, I understand that you are the spokesperson for the president. These are images that are traumatizing Haitian Americans that he promised to treat respectfully and with humanity. Why isn't the president telling people himself these images that people say look like slavery are wrong? Me as president, I as president, condemn them. How is he not doing that? Why is he not doing that? What are people supposed to take away from the fact that he's not at the bully pulpit himself talking about these images?
Yamiche, I think people should take away that his actions make clear how horrible and horrific he thinks these images are, including an investigation, including a change of policy, including conveying clearly that this is not acceptable and he's not going to stand for this in the Biden-Harris administration. Our actions make that absolutely crystal clear, as have our engagements with a range of voices, a range of concerned advocates, members of Congress, and others who we want to communicate with, not just about our horror, but also about what our...
We can stop there. So, to me, this is just, and there's a parade of other people who chimed in along these lines. I mean, our favorite Joanne Reed tweeted out, "Is this 2021 or 1851?" And to me, this is a classic example of something we've talked about in this show a lot, which is this sort of woke washing, right? You're distracting from attention from one thing that's the big policy issue by having people go focus all their attention on something else. And this meme that developed over the weekend or over last week and over the weekend about the whips and the reins, and you'll notice that Yamiche even said that people say look like slavery, right? She wouldn't even go there herself. And she
is, by the way, Haitian American.
Yeah. And I do get the reaction when, we had it ourselves too, but I was under the impression at the time that they were actually carrying whips.
Yeah.
And, which would have to me been nuts. And, if it's not that, then all these people, first of all, had
it's normie nuts. It's like normie nuts in a way. I mean, I do still think that, and this is a hard thing to talk about because I don't want to sound like I'm whitewashing it. I guess there is a difference between whips and reins. There is a difference between whipping a horse or whatever, cracking a rein at a horse versus at a human being.
And are we swinging this because that's part of the way that you ride the horse, that you can? I grew up riding. I never used those kinds of reins. Yes, I did. Yeah, I lived in England. I took believe it or not, equestrian classes once upon a time. I know it's embarrassing.
How old were you?
I was 7, 8. Yeah. So I can ride, not that's clearly a different setup than I've ever seen. But maybe that's the way you ride the horse. Maybe that is swinging that thing is part of the way that you ride the horse. I don't know. If no one saw them actually strike anybody with that, then we're dealing with something that looks bad, but maybe is not, or but either way, the issue with all this is that the policy decision was what was consequential here. They had a whole gigantic mass of people who are living under a bridge, and suddenly they're gone. You have your envoy to Haiti that resigns over that, and this is against the backdrop of a lengthy policy effort to tell everybody around the world not to come, to tell refugees not to come, to turn away refugees, right? And
yes, and using a title 242 to as of now, he's already deported more people under that than Trump, which we said in our latest Useful Idiot show. So yes, I do think that this is kind of the flip side of Trump's disgusting discourse. This is like the outrage side of it. And like they're outraged at the stuff that he would have praised. And in both cases, the actual policy gets ignored.
Right.
So where are these people who used to be under the bridge? I mean, it's like that Mayorkas is bragging about the fact that they're gone. Where are they? They're just out of sight. And that's I
don't know. They're like they're catapulting through space somewhere, or they, again, first of all, the illusion that this is not your own responsibility is kind of amazing to me, that they get away with that. Like, can you imagine asking Donald Trump, what is it about these people swinging at these, their reins and these whips at these immigrants, and having a string of Trump officials say, "Oh, it's horrible. It evokes images of slavery," and having nobody's point out that it's their own border control agency.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? That would never happen. Right. So,
and on either front, like his people would never say something like that.
Of course, they would never say something like that.
And but also no one would accept like kicking the buck, passing the buck.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. To me, this was a classic. We talked with Charles Jaco last week, and he talked about how the first draft of history is always wrong, right? And that TV should come with a Surgeon General's warning. Just basically says, look, we get this stuff wrong at first a lot, right? Be prepared for there to be adjustments to interpretations of things that you see on live TV. Yes. And this is a classic example of that. The early to come out in the news are often kind of fraught with either big or little mistakes. But the difference is that once upon a time, we used to kind of go back over them and at least acknowledge them. And now we just steamroll past them and pretend they didn't happen, and we subtly change the language. Like if you see the headlines now, it'll say things like "whip like rains." You know what I'm saying? And so I don't know. You add that to the sort of woke washing aspect of this, where we're suddenly not talking about the disappearance of these immigrants. To me, this was sort of classic media behavior in the Trump era. It felt like to me.
And it becomes just about optics and not about the policy.
Right.
So, and how we contribute to the crisis in the first place, how Obama
there we go.
did. Yeah, White House condemns border guards' use of whip-like cord against Haitian migrants. But it's true. I mean, I also, it is interesting how I think how easy it is to forget that there is, I mean, that this is a visceral thing. I'm not saying the photographer, I don't know if the photographer did this knowingly, knew that it would make an, I mean, it's hard to not evoke that time period, even if, unless the photo had been very much like they're clearly on, I guess if it had been very still, like they were sitting on a horse holding their reins and there was a body next to it. But it is true that this is a very emotionally, like visceral, this content is very visceral and emotional. And it was very easy to just focus on whether or not Biden was, because then what you also had, and I made fun of this a little bit, where you had people, before we knew they were reins and not whips, people were like, well, how do we know what they are? Or what did someone say? Like the Border Patrol are Republicans. They voted for Trump. Like all these people defending the Biden administration and Biden.
Right.
So then I kind of forgot about the policy too. I was like, are they going to condemn this or what? And then they did. And then that's just an out. Like I forgot that part. That's like, okay, great. They did that. And now what?
Yeah. And look, here's the quote from the photographer, Paul Ratchey. He says, I've never seen them whip anyone. He was swinging it, but it can be misconstrued when you're looking at the picture. Photographers, you know, I'm not saying that he did this, but photographers often know that they're taking a picture of something that looks inflammatory, but look, they got to sell, right? So, you know, the more the stuff circulates, the sexier the image, you know, the better you do, the more work you get. And so it can be tough, you know, like, especially if they're, you know, submitting it on behalf of a wire service, and the wire copy goes around everywhere, and everyone just adds their own thing to the copy. Like then you're off to the races in terms of like mistakes and misinterpretations. So, but anyway, so that happened. What else do we have from yesterday?
So much. Where should we start? Should we start with our long? I'm always partial to Meet the Press, obviously.
All right, let's go for Meet the Press.
And of course, it is a metaphor on their treatment of Haitians in general. That's another reason it lends itself.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and guess that this is just how
this Sunday the Biden agenda.
Sorry.
I'm just going to go ahead and guess that this is how those guys operate with any kind of immigrant. You know, like they're equestrian border patrol agents.
Yeah,
that's what they do.
Let us know, guys. Send us the photos.
Yeah. All right. So Meet the Press.
Okay.
The authors of the new book, Peril, Bob Woodward and Robert Costa. Joining me for insight and analysis are Amy Walter, editor-in-chief and publisher of the Cook Political Report, Eddie Glaude Jr. of Princeton University, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell, and Meghan McCain, columnist for thedailymail.com. Welcome to Sunday. It's Meet the Press.
Okay, can we just rewind that just so we, first of all, just pause for a second. Okay, Meghan McCain is now at the Daily Mail, which is amazing because that's one of our favorite sources for Isn't That Terrible and Isn't That Weird? So shout out to Meghan McCain. I think she used to be at the Daily Beast. I think this is actually a better fit, and it's hard to get worse than the Daily Beast, but Daily Mail is it. But watch the spring in
You do know that I've written for the Daily Mail, by the way.
Oh, how recently?
No, it was a long time ago, like in the mid-90s.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. I stand by that then. Okay. But look at the spring in this. Look at how he says welcome to. It's like he's on Adderall or something. Just watch his welcome to. You can play from here, yeah.
Thedailymail.com. Welcome to Sunday. It's Meet the Press.
From NBC News.
Anyway.
Tuck Chad,
yeah.
Yeah, he's been a little bit caffeinated lately.
Yeah.
You know, it's I don't know. I go back and forth on his style, but was there anything about this particular?
No, just the way he said it. I thought, welcome.
Right. Well, look, there was one thing on that show. There were two things. We kind of went over it already. One of them already, and we glazed over it. Could we just briefly look at the Biden clip again for Meet the Press? Because he said something interesting at the end, which was sort of amazing.
The process, and it's going to be up and down. That's why I don't look at the polls.
President Biden, who ran on bringing competency back to Washington, is facing a string of setbacks, a chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, a migrant crisis at the border, the ongoing COVID pandemic, and now a brewing fight on Capitol Hill between progressive and moderate Democrats over his domestic agenda. The president's job approval rating is now underwater in most polls.
Remember, I said it's going to take me a year to deliver everything I'm looking at here.
On the border, the camp in Del Rio, Texas, that was once packed with 15,000 migrants, mostly Haitians, is now gone.
There are no longer any migrants in the camp.
On Thursday, the U.S. Special Envoy resigned in protest.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, you keep going.
No, just Biden, the sort of nonchalant, my approval rating's down to 43 or 42% or whatever it is. And, but, you know, I told you this was going to happen. It was going to take me a year to do everything that I wanted to do. So don't worry about that. I mean, look, I think approval ratings are not always terribly meaningful. They tend to be pegged to specific news events, and people change their minds over time. And typically when it comes around to elections, they forget about momentary crises and tend to vote with, how the economy's doing and stuff like that. However, he's had a prolonged now 6 weeks of going in the wrong direction. And remember, there were some initial stories talking about how, his dip down to 51 or 50 or 49 was nothing like what Trump experienced. He's now kind of like in the higher end of Trump territory. Like 43 is where Trump was on a good day, or 40, 44, 45, 46 was where Trump was on a good day.
But how is that, do you think, the result of the media's discourse around Biden? Like people like Chuck.
Well, that's what's interesting. That's what's interesting is that I didn't think at the beginning of this administration, what we saw was this kind of overweening effort to explain away any bad news involving the Biden administration, and they heaped praise on them for everything. Like, the classic example was when the Biden administration decided not to jeopardize their relationship with Saudi Arabia over the Khashoggi thing. And they used exactly the same justification that Trump had used. And whereas, the press had denounced Trump for it, the press in the case of Biden was like praising his pragmatism and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, those days are over. And suddenly now it's, Trump is gone. They're not able to get ratings for Trump. So they're beating the shit out of Biden. And I didn't see this coming. Is this like a ratings thing or
I don't and it's not, hold on one second. Is this, I didn't know this. Did you know this? Leanne Caldwell is married to Gregory. We have to confirm this. Jacko, the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Huh.
Interesting. She's one of the.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the people are getting upset a little in the chat. I don't know if they're being serious or not, but saying that I'm stop defending Biden. No one's defending Biden on this show. I mean, the thing that he's getting the most crap for is the Afghanistan thing, which is something I think was, I mean, I don't know enough about pullouts to know exactly whether there were major errors that need to be avoided, but I'm for our pulling out, obviously. So when I talk about Chuck Todd's thing, like I mean, Chuck Todd is I find him to be blaming Biden for things that are not really within his control. There's tons of stuff to blame Biden for. I think people should have been paid to stay home. I think that, he's terrible in many ways, but I don't think that the things that the media is mad at him for, this kind of media, are the things that he should be punished for. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So on the Afghanistan thing, he Well, they clearly made a mistake in terms of judging how long they had to complete the process of an orderly withdrawal, which is their fault, right? Because they were clearly doing what all the administrations previously did and believing their own phony reporting about what was going on in Afghanistan. Like, they thought they had control over more of the country than they did. They had more faith in the Afghan government, being a real government or having any interest in, fighting than they did. So they did make that mistake, and that was a bad mistake, because as a result, a lot of people are going to get stuck in country. There are going to be reprisals, and that was an ugly. They deserve to take some heat for that. I think sticking to the withdrawal is a good thing,
right? Yeah.
So, and they are getting some heat from the typically hawkish, corporate sort of news media, which wants them to pursue a middle strategy or leave special forces in there or do whatever it is to make us not look like we're being run on a rail by the Taliban, right?
Yes.
So that's stupid. On the border policy, they're taking a lot of heat, and I think they deserve it on the border stuff, because like in every direction, because for a variety of reasons. Number one being that,
Oh, me too on that stuff too. Sorry, that stuff also.
Yeah, because first of all, we heard nothing but the most, outrageous, heavy-handed moaning throughout the Trump years about the mistreatment of people at the border and the refusal to take in refugees and all that stuff. And they've come in.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, and they come in and they essentially just prolong the same policy in a way that it's almost worse, I would say, because they're presenting it while trying to maintain this fiction of being humanitarians in some way. Like they're doing it while saying, "Oh gosh, look at that horrific treatment at the border."
Like, let's get
seriously?
them off horseback. Yeah. Let's get them off horseback so that we can get back to doing what we do best, which is humanely not letting.
Let's
after we've destroyed their economy and, really wreck their economy, so we could have sweatshops there.
Right.
Not to mention, cooing out Aristide.
Right. Well, there's that.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, why not? We can do anything we want.
Yeah.
Right? It's a free country still.
Yeah. I mean, who they don't do this to is, not that they're same terrain, but you don't see this happening to Cubans a lot. That's what they should do. Whatever they do to other immigrants, they got to do to Cubans. That'll stop it real quick.
Wait, what do you mean?
I'm saying, because they won't do certain things that they Cuban immigrants are treated very differently from other immigrants for various reasons, because of mostly for PR reasons. I mean, there's obviously economic reasons, but I think that if there's a uniform policy or treatment of all immigrants, and they have to do to Cubans what they do to non-Cubans, then things would change maybe. Right. Yeah. I guess so. Like an Elian, imagine a Haitian Elian Gonzalez, which half the people watching here probably have no idea who that kid is, but now he's in.
Oh God. Yeah. Well, no, this was a little bit of an Elian Gonzalez type story, the whip thing.
Yeah, but except there was no real fight to. I mean, in the end, Elian Gonzalez, because international law was on the side of returning him to his living parent in Cuba. This is a story from the 90s when a kid.
When dinosaurs roamed the earth. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. When a kid was taken, his mom took him, and there was a raft drowned. She drowned, And then his Cuban American family really wanted to keep him here, protect him, keep him safe from Castro. And, you know, it was so bad that the Clintons, who were not exactly haters of I mean, no politician is haters of the Miami exile community, but they sent him back because it was just black and white. What you do in this case when you have a living parent in another country.
Right. Yeah.
But imagine like the U.S. being torn over what to do with like a Haitian kid. It just never would have happened.
Right. Yeah.
Bad.
Well, if they got the right picture, I'm sure they could make almost any story out of it. But yeah, no. And again, on the border stuff, after everything that we listened to for the last 4 years for all this to happen, I kind of get it. But it is interesting that people like, Chuck Todd are switching into, aggressive mode, right? Like we know exactly what this is when they start flashing up the approval ratings and the panic imagery of, the numbers going down and, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? And they're getting pressure from both sides. And look, there's AOC and Bernie on one side, going after him. And then there's other critics on the other side. Like they're trying to drum up this story like, oh, the Biden administration is sinking and maybe they suck and they don't really know what they're doing. Like this is just like standard issue tabloid television.
Right.
We just haven't seen this kind of towards Democrats since Trump came along. So,
right. And they're really not talking about, like, I don't get any feeling of they're having any humanitarian concerns. And of course, they're of course never in a million years going to talk about what the United States does to create the conditions that makes it so that people are running, seeking asylum from Haiti. But it's much more like he's being a bad manager. Like that's the vibe I get from the critique of Biden. Like it's just not good optics, but you don't see anyone like making the case for the humanity of these asylum seekers.
Right.
It's just like this is a mess. This is a mess. When are you going to get this under control?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. All right. Can we look at the
I got some. Yeah, what do you? There's some good stuff from this, but we can go to another show. But there's some good stuff with Cory Booker and Meghan McCain.
Sure, let's do that.
Okay, so can we just watch it 6:08? These are short. And John Podesta famously is the person who was not hacked but phished. Remember, he was asked what his password was, and he emailed cybersecurity. This is the guy, Podesta's at Center for American Progress. He's a huge Democrat honcho. And
yeah, he's patient zero of Russiagate, basically.
Yes, right. Because he got an email asking for his password, and he wrote to cybersecurity and said, should I click on this? And they were like, definitely do click on this instead of do not click on this, which is so funny.
I mean, the whole thing is funny. It's, well, anyway.
All right. So if we can play from, where does it start? 5:30.
Using that as a hostage towards this.
Former Obama White House Chief of Staff John Podesta is calling on progressives to pare back their ambitions, writing, "The political reality is clear. We will not secure the full $3.5 trillion investment." And Podesta is warning centrists. You are either getting both bills or neither, and the prospect of neither is unconscionable.
It's politically catastrophic if we don't move forward with these bills at this time.
And joining me now is the Democratic Senator from New Jersey, Cory Booker. Senator Booker, welcome back to Meet the Press.
It's really great to be back on.
It's good to have you in person. We don't, and we're getting there. John Podesta earlier this week wrote a memo that said, he's basically sending a memo to both sides of this argument.
Okay, pause right there.
It's like, look, you're going to have to come together.
I really thought that was, I'm not kidding for a second. I thought that was not making a joke. I thought that was Biden and Harris.
In the background.
Yeah. Can you go back to that, Wilson? A couple seconds after the other thing. If you just play it.
Said, he's basically sending a memo to both sides of this.
There you go. At first, I thought that was Harris. Then I thought it was, oh my gosh, wow, Harris and Biden. Yeah.
Is she gonna push him off like a cliff?
She will. Yeah. What does his bag say?
Juniper, your net.
What is that?
I have no idea what that means. I'm not even gonna hazard a guess. Yeah. No, that would be really interesting if this turned out to be the Zapruder film of our generation, right? Like, it turns out that in the middle of Chuck Todd interviewing Cory Booker, Kamala Harris was actually pushing Joe Biden either off a cliff or into a wood chipper.
Unclear. Someone wrote good campaign photo for 2024.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. God, 2024 is going to be amazing.
Oh
it's either going to be her or it's going to be him, and he's going to be, producing whole milkshakes of drool by that time.
Oh my God, milkshakes of drool. Yeah. Wow.
Right?
Who the hell? What are they going to do? Yeah.
It's going to be intense. Anyway, is there more here?
Yeah, there's a little bit more. Where's the next thing? At 9:20.
Who are battling it out in Congress. This is about the American people. And to get half of this done and leave mothers who are looking for affordable child care, Americans who are looking for lower cost prescription drugs, to leave people like that on the wayside, families that need that child tax credit, to leave those folks on the wayside is unacceptable to me. So I've seen the best of intentions. I want a more real guarantee.
Well, you just don't believe, the word's not enough?
No, again.
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
No,
it's basically saying that Joe Manchin's word's not enough here.
Look, I have been looked in the eye by people in this town, and they meant it sincerely. There was honor in them saying it. Hey, Cory, we're not going to get this in such and such a bill, but we'll get to it. Well,
so
sometimes
Todd,
I get to it turns out to be a year, the next Congress.
Chuck Todd is like gaslighting Cory Booker. Like he's surprised that he doesn't think something's going to happen unless it happens.
Yeah,
like
maybe
why
he's just been taking belligerence pills. I don't know.
But it's just such a weird thing. It's like, since when is it? Like, is he really? He's like, oh wow, you don't trust another politician to. Why wouldn't you trust Joe Manchin, who's like so not forthcoming about anything? First of all, I think he's just trying to create drama between him and Manchin.
Huh.
Because then if you go to 3231, we're going to see a callback right now to this Booker.
That they're trying to fit together, and it's extremely complicated. And my sources say they don't know how it's going to play out yet.
Pythagorean theorem in here at all? And Amy, it was remarkable to me that Cory Booker was like, yeah, I don't. He didn't say I don't trust. But he then described a situation that he says, I don't trust.
I know we're not supposed to do this, but before we came on, we were chatting about this. And we were reminded of the number of times where the House has felt like they were hung out to dry, that they passed something, whether it's climate, whether it's back in the 90s, the BTU tax, only to find that the Senate.
Oh, this has happened to House Republicans, too, right? This is a Senate and a House do this to each other no matter who's in charge.
It happened with the health care bill, right? They took that big vote and then watched the Senate go.
Right.
To me, where we are, though, is so much driven by that phrase that Mike Tyson once had, that everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, right? Yeah. And the plan back in the spring was, by this point, we would be free from COVID. The economy would be roaring back. And of course, the momentum that would bring to this legislative process. Democrats would come together. This would be, not as big of a lift as it is right now. Now what we have is a president who's desperate for his party to give him momentum, right? He's not bringing it to the table.
Megan, I want you to play a reporter here for us, because you may have the best sense of Kyrsten Sinema. I know you have a pretty good personal relationship. That's the frustration Democrats say. They don't know what Joe Manchin wants. They don't know what his bottom line is, and they don't know what her bottom line is. How would
That's weird. Isn't that weird? So she's saying play reporter because you have a good personal relationship with Kyrsten Sinema. which is weird. I think Matt's frozen on a good expression. Why did my thing go out?
Well, I mean, politically in Arizona, I think that's why people like her so much. Just anecdotally, conservatives in my life really like her because, you know, she's holding the line for conservatives in a lot of ways. The question I always have is, you know, for people like Joe Manchin, if it's not him, it's going to be a Republican. So this distaste and this, you know, outward hostility towards moderates in the Democratic Party surprises me. I also was shocked by seeing Senator Booker talking about sort of openly this distrust between progressives and moderates. How the Democratic Party ultimately threads the needle, I don't know. But I will say that President Biden ran on being a moderate, as you said. He ran and won with the help of independent, centrists, you know, Trump-wary Republicans, and he is not governing as one. The Build Back Better agenda is the most progressive, modern agenda of all time, up to $5 trillion, and it's not polling well. So I think I'm just confused.
We can pause this. Oh, it's Taibbi's back too. Hey.
Sorry.
That's okay. Everyone's like, Meghan McCain killed Matt.
She did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's so there's a couple things that are weird about that. One is that he says you may have to do some reporting because you know her personally, which is weird.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what makes Kyrsten Sinema tick? What does she want? But also then, of course, McCain goes off on this thing as if she's like this at all impartial voice where she's basically stumping for the moderates. I don't know if you saw this, Matt, because you may have been disconnected, but she was like, if it's not a Democrat like Manchin's going to be a Republican, what do they want? Why are they bashing these moderates? But of course, like the difference is he's a Democrat, and as you pointed out many a time, like Chuck Schumer could actually kick him into shape, like make demands of him.
Yeah, I just don't buy. I don't buy any of the, look at Sinema and Manchin and they're
right.
Like, you ever see the Untouchables?
I haven't seen that. About
No.
Elliot Ness.
Yeah, so there's a scene where Elliot Ness charges into Al Capone's hotel room as Al Capone is coming down a flight of stairs, and he wants to fight Capone, and as soon as Capone sees what's happening, he stops for a minute, but then he has all of his people hold him back, and then he starts like struggling as though he wants to fight him, right? And it's phony, right? So the whole thing is for like, if it wasn't for these people holding me back, we'd be fist fighting right now. That's all this is. It's the same game over and over again. And then these shows, all they do is hammer home this idea that it's these two people who are holding back, these bills. But then then you hear people like John Podesta talk, right? And what he really is he symbolizes the actual dialogue that's going on within the party, right? And they are more than happy to get a smaller bill because that's what they want, right? They just don't want to have to they don't want to have to wear the political consequences for it. So they want things both ways, and all this is just a show, feels like to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I like the idea of them using Meghan McCain as a divining rod for
I know, me too.
for Kyrsten Sinema.
Yeah.
Like, can you close your eyes and concentrate really hard? Like, what's going on in her mind?
Yeah. Tap into your inner Kyrsten Sinema.
What number is she thinking of right now? It's a 7,
7, 11.
Right, exactly. Just quickly, a couple more things. Can we watch the Greg Abbott clip?
I will give you the words of Border Patrol agents themselves in Del Rio when they said that the surge of migrants across the border was stopped only when the Texas Department of Public Safety and the National Guard showed up to provide a steel barrier to prevent the migrants from coming across. As soon as the National Guard and the Texas Department of Public Safety showed up, literally with hundreds, if not thousands of vehicles, that is when the illegal migration stopped. That's exactly what the Biden administration could do if they wanted to. But, Chris, it's the kind of thing that Texas is going to have to continue to do in addition to the other policies that you did not announce. And that is, as opposed to catch and release, Texas has imposed a policy where we are going to arrest and jail people who come across the border for trespassing into areas into the state of Texas.
So that's kind of amazing to me. They're going to essentially declare America like, I don't know, some kind of private property that you can't trespass. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they're gonna create a trespassing law for people who are. So I imagine it wouldn't apply to someone who is a U.S. citizen. So they wouldn't be trespassing. So it's not the land that's going to be the issue. It's the status of the person.
I mean, I'm surprised that they haven't turned it into a bounty project like abortion. That's what they should do.
Mean like where like you get to hunt them or something like that? You get like a bounty for every fur that you bring in.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. Go back in time. Yeah, no, that was crazy. Like it's just so crazy to watch American politics work this way, because like on the immigration issue, the difference between the two parties is it's so strange, because they're both completely ruthless. They both have essentially a policy of escalating deportations, and the difference is there is this tonal thing where the Republicans are really kind of proud of it, right? And the Democrats are sort of pretending that they're not doing it, but man, you know, trespassing.
Someone said, how is that different from, someone said, I'm not really clear on how that's different than the existing law regarding illegal crossing.
Well, okay, there the act is crossing the border illegally, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then
not being on a piece of property.
Well, right, and then subsequently, you know, if you arrest somebody for an immigration violation, the violation is like not having the right papers. It's not trespassing. You know what I'm saying? Like trespassing is about the ground
you're on, yeah.
Not about your status or whatever the papers you're carrying in your pocket. Like that's just.
Oops, Matt lost it at that. I get it. Abbott's a nightmare. Catch and release is a term. It's true. Used in fishing regulations. He views the migrants as fish and wildlife. Yeah, but those should be protected. But he doesn't think so. So. Ooh, all right. Let's watch that clip again until Matt comes back. Wilson, can we play that? Oh, he's back. There he is. Okay.
Anyway.
That is really scary.
So
also illegal under international law.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I mean, anyway, so that happened. Did we want to talk about something else? Do we want to talk about this the booster shot thing?
Oh, sure. Or whatever. I put a lot in, but so it's up to you. Which one do you want to talk about?
No, this is you.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, but do you have any more you want to put in? No. If you do, then if not, we can do booster. I just think it's a sad. It's not really. There's no real news. Except.
Well. Yeah, I mean, it's.
What are they gonna do for Halloween?
Right. All right. Well, let's watch that. This is the Halloween rollout thing on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan.
The CEO of Pfizer, the company you started on the board of, affirmed today that data on vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds will be going to the FDA within a matter of days. Is that confirming your schedule of vaccines by Halloween?
Yeah, I think that's still possible. FDA has said that the review is going to be a matter of weeks, not months. I interpret that to mean potentially a 4-week review, maybe a 6-week review. So I think on the low end, it could take 4 weeks, and that could give you a vaccine by Halloween. If it slips a little, it could be mid-November.
Okay.
Are your kids okay?
Not yet, no.
Yeah, are they looking forward to this
vaccination?
Yeah. I mean, I'm imagining them being like, what do you do when you're vaccinated or not how does that have an effect on your costume?
I don't know. And how should it have an effect on Halloween? Like, you're outside anyway.
Right.
Yeah, this whole thing, it's strange because the whole issue with children, especially with like kids under 12, we've had like no real public discussion over, is that really necessary?
Yeah.
You know, because again, anything that you talk about in that direction is understood to be an anti-vax type of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's going to be strange, no matter what. But yeah, no, there was a lot of talk about that this weekend. Let's see. We had. Oh yeah, let's watch Lindsey Graham. Dump on Donald Trump. That was sort of interesting. If we have it. We got that, Matt?
We have the description of it, right? Or do we have them actually live dumping or just description?
No, it's in there. Hang on a second.
Yeah, bring it up 1 sec.
All right.
Because we also had what's his name talking about it.
We've only got a few minutes left anyway, but this was sort of funny.
Bob, the roles of Lindsey Graham and Mark Meadows here, at times it looked like they were sort of enabling President Trump's wishes on this election, and at times they seem to want to steer him away from this. Is that the case? How would you characterize their roles?
Well, there's a lot of ambivalence here, but we quote conversations between Senator Graham and Trump in which Lindsey Graham said to Trump, "You effed up your presidency," at one point, just a couple of months ago. And Trump hung up on him and then called him back a day later. And Lindsey Graham said to him, "I would have hung up too." And the core conclusion that Graham has is you lost a close election. Face it, notch it back. And now we have Trump out calling Senator Lee and Senator Graham, somehow they folded. Trump is attacking them because they found the truth. And the truth is, this was not a stolen election.
And it really wasn't even that close.
No, it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
But we felt an obligation to look at that, and that's how we found these memos that were written. Giuliani wrote all these memos to Lindsey Graham saying all kinds of fraudulent votes, kids voted, dead people voted, and then they looked at this. It's not there.
It's debunk.
All right. Well, first of all, okay, yeah, talk about
No, good.
it. I mean, it's funny hearing him talk about feeling an obligation to do anything journalistically, because remember, this is a guy who decided to sit on the story about Trump downplaying COVID, which, like, if that's not an example of something being in the public interest, I don't really know what is.
Yeah, he also said he also kind of sort of said on the we looked for evidence of collusion and didn't find it Like that never appeared in the Washington Post. He only that was only in an interview that he did like for a book tour.
I guess that doesn't. It's not that that's not upsetting, but it doesn't surprise me the way that the other one does a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Well,
because one is like just journalistic integrity, and the other one is actual like immediate public health concern.
Right. Yeah. Well, you got to sell books.
Yeah, you got to sell books. It's so
disgusting. Did I just have that thought? I did. I just had that thought. So yeah, and look, this is Bob Woodward. He's the king of getting this kind of thing, like the Lindsey Graham telling Donald Trump, "You fucked up your presidency."
Yeah,
that's the kind of detail that you only get when you've got access to somebody like Lindsey Graham, who's or somebody close to him, who's whispering that kind of stuff to you, and that's how Bob Woodward does his job, and he's probably the best at it in terms of like getting high level figures to give their side of the story, kind of behind the scenes, as opposed to the Hirsch level, the Hirsch method, which is to scour the middle ranks and bottom ranks of organizations and and find out what they have to say about their bosses. Woodward is the one who goes out to lunches with senators and senatorial aides, and he's getting this kind of stuff, which is it's fascinating, right? It's just a different way of doing the job, so
yeah, probably make and it's easier to get burned, I guess, if you're a Hirsch, right?
Yeah, well, yes, because it's like more of an arrangement. What Woodward does, he's like negotiating with his sources, basically. Like, okay, well, you're going to give me this, and there's sort of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge sort of thing. Right. Like, I'm going to end up not looking so bad over here, but I'm going to give you this over here, right? Whereas like the Hirsch method is, I'm going to give you a story that makes everybody up there look bad, and they're going to turn their guns on you and on me immediately the instant the story comes out, and it's a big bloodbath. And whereas
that's what I meant by burnt. Yeah,
exactly. So it's just two different ways of approaching the job. But Woodward is, I don't know how old he is, but he's still getting stuff like this, and all power to him. So anyway, that was Monday morning edition, right? Do we have anything else?
Monday morning? No, I think that's it. Send us stories. Use the hashtag UsefulIdiotPod, UsefulIdiotsPod hashtag. You can follow the handle UsefulIdiotPod. Also follow us on Twitter and become Substack subscribers, and tell us what stories or moments you want us to cover from these wonderful shows.
That's right. Exactly. All right. We will see you again soon. And thanks for tuning in.
And everyone subscribe to this on YouTube. All right. Bye, everyone.